medical problems, a lot of people would have just retreated into private life after that, in seclusion. She was right back out there. She is someone known for a tremendous, tremendous work ethic. Now, she's not known for being the best boss to have, but when it comes to someone who's just always out there, always speaking, she does it. Now, interesting thing about Martha Stewart, she has uhs and ums come up. It's not that she's perfectly fluent, but she does come across in a consistent way in her own style. Her image is that of the wildly successful, rich, beautiful Connecticut woman who has it all with the glamorous friends, the glorious horse farms, and everything is beautiful. And it's this beautiful world where there's beautiful dinner parties and weekends in the country. And she just exudes this whole aspirational lifestyle every time you see her. And it's not because of a fancy vocabulary or anything else, but in part it is her look. No matter how old she is, when she was really young, she was a fashion model in Manhattan and on the cover of magazines. Now she's nearly 80, but she still has a consistent look that is aspirational to many people. She comes across as calm, sophisticated, yet isn't afraid to get her hands dirty and really roll up her sleeves and tell you exactly how to fix this fence or exactly how to revarnish this door. That's what makes her a compelling speaker. That and just the pure, prodigious output. She keeps going and going and going, and she's always looking for new people to partner with. In recent years, she's partnered with Snoop Dogg for various TV shows. She is fearless. Take a look at the video. See what you like and what you don't like. Bill O'Reilly was the top-rated talk show host for all of cable news in the United States and seen throughout the world for an incredibly long time, like more than 15 years. That's an incredible accomplishment to be number one in prime time. You don't do that by luck or just being on the right network. He was able to do this in part because I believe he communicated so clearly. He knew his audience. He knew their beliefs. He shared with them his view of the world distilled in such a way as it resonated with them. And he brought to it a certain level of intellectual discipline. And he didn't try to be things he was. He didn't really try to be funny. He didn't really try to be extra empathetic. He didn't try to be warm and cuddly. He had his own style. And he was, for those of you not familiar with him, he was on the conservative side of the political spectrum in the United States and was very sympathetic to conservative causes and politicians. But he was able to explain the world, analyze the top stories of the day in a way that struck a lot of people, even if they didn't agree with him, as reasonable, as intelligent, as somewhat fair, logical, and rational. Now, he didn't appeal to everyone, and the people on the other side of the political spectrum did not particularly like him. But he was there day in, day out, communicating, and he wrote his own commentaries every night. He dictated them and wrote them out himself. So these were his own words. Great communicators. Now, if you're president of a country, yes, you're going to have speechwriters, but the greatest communicators, I find, do spend a lot of time creating their own words. It's certain parts of their career. We'll talk about Ronald Reagan as well. Ronald Reagan obviously had speechwriters, but for many, many, many years he wrote all of his daily commentaries for his radio commentaries by hand himself. Great communicators think about their words. They think about what they want to say, and they communicate a lot. And someone like Bill O'Reilly, who was on the air every single night for more than 20 years, and he's still somewhere on the internet doing political commentary as well. But when you are forced to think about what you want to say every day and write it out, that creates a discipline and it builds your strength as a communicator. By the way, for many years he also did a daily 3-hour talk radio show, which is another type of presenting, another type of communication skill. And that wasn't nearly as successful. Television was his medium. The opening talking points memo could be 3 minutes long, could be 10 minutes long. That was how he initially grabbed his audience. So take a look below at one of his commentaries, and you could see there's nothing that exciting about it. There's no tremendous pizzazz or flourish, but there is a clear-cut perspective, clear-cut emotion, and a consistency to it. And that's why he was, and still is, a successful communicator. Of public speakers who've been on the international stage, well known in the English-speaking world and around the world, and of speakers who've been around for several decades, I have to put Bill Clinton at the very top of the list when it comes to pure public speaking skill. Even his political enemies, people who don't share his view on politics or policy, would concede he is a world-class public speaker. With Clinton, I could have picked almost any speech, and I say almost, I'll talk about his one biggest blunder, almost any speech he's given in the last 30 years, and we could point to a near virtuoso performance. He really connects with people. He is the master of eye contact, as you've heard me talk about in other sections of this course. He's always exuding an empathy. He has a masterful use of his voice. He might occasionally speak a little bit louder, but then he'll instantly soften it and contrast it with a whisper. He has great facial expressions, movement. The only thing I would fault him on is at some point, some consultant somewhere told him it's bad to point. And he does this awkward thing with his thumb, which I've never seen anyone in real life having a conversation do. That's the one area where I would tell him, don't do that, that looks phony and contrived. But everything else, he just comes across as incredibly natural, relaxed, likable. And he truly gives you the sense that he is here in the moment, just sharing with you. Now, I've seen him many times in person, going back to the 1980s at political conventions. He's basically always the same. He's pretty much always the best speaker anyone has seen that day, that weekend, that week, that month, or ever. Now, he does have some skills that most people don't have. He has a near photographic memory. Famously, during a joint session of Congress that he was speaking to, early in his term, he didn't have his speech loaded in the teleprompter properly. It was the previous year's speech. So he spoke for the first 10 or 15 minutes just from memory. No one had any idea. Now, most people can't do that. And you don't need to have a photographic memory to be a great speaker. I do think you can learn from him by showing and looking at how he demonstrates pausing, animation, using simple words. Now, this is a bright, again, you may hate Bill Clinton for a variety of reasons. He is very, very intellectual. You talk to any public policy professor who's met Clinton, they'll tell you he knows more about the subject than they do. Has an expensive vocabulary, but when you listen to him speak, he uses the simplest words possible. Small words, and yet nobody thinks he's stupid. He's able to clarify things. He's able to put a spotlight on issues. He's able to make the case, whether it's his own campaign, other politicians, other campaigns, in a way that other speakers, other politicians simply cannot do. So, regardless of your politics, you might not even care about politics, you certainly cannot harm yourself by studying carefully, in great detail, how Bill Clinton speaks. I do put him way above John F. Kennedy as a speaker, or Roosevelt, or others, because I think he's so much more natural, more conversational, and his ability to be in the moment when he speaks, where you feel like, wow, he's just talking to me, even though you're in a room with 50,000 other people. It still comes across as genuine, interesting, memorable. Take a look. Post your comments on what you like and don't like, but please don't turn this into a forum about your politics. If you didn't like something about his policies or personal, this isn't the place for it, okay? For more than 3 decades, Deepak Chopra has been one of the most influential health and wellness experts known throughout the world. He's originally from New Delhi, India, but came to the United States. This is his home base. And he is just a master at communicating his vision of health, meditation, and how someone can live a disease-free, healthy life. That's his expertise. Now, he was trained in a traditional Western medical program, was a medical doctor, but has fused together Eastern philosophies, meditation, healthy eating, because he frankly got sick of writing so many prescriptions for pills for his patients. That is his motivation, in his own words, of why he got into this. Now, I think he's fascinating as a speaker, in part because he doesn't let the fact that he has a strong Indian accent slow him down. Many people, I find, clients from all over the world, say, TJ, I have an accent, I'm worried, no one will understand me, no one will like me. And their accent is much easier for the typical American or Western or English-speaking audience to understand than Deepak Chopra. And yet, he's wildly successful He has appeared on Oprah countless times. He's had his own shows. He's had gazillions of books, radio shows. He's everywhere. He's also someone who uses new media. You see him in documentaries. You see him on YouTube. You see him starting his own social media sites all over the place. He's constantly out there. He has his ideas. He has a passion for sharing ideas. He's more than 70 years old now, but he's not slowing down. Writing books, speaking engagements, online media, traditional media, guest on shows. He's speaking, sharing his passion. That's what great communicators do. That's what great presenters do. They don't let the fact that they don't have a standard accent for that culture slow them down. They don't let the fact that they're over 65 or 70 slow them down. They don't let the fact that they were good in one medium of traditional books with traditional publishers and now the world's gone to blogging and social media slow them down. They just adapt to each new medium, continue sharing their message. He is, in that regard, a true inspiration. Take a look at the video below. Leave your comments on what you like, don't like about his speaking style. William F. Buckley Jr. was an American political commentator, very active on TV, public forums, speaking everywhere, author, pundit, columnist, from the 1950s when he was in his 20s until just a few years ago when he passed away. He had a tremendous impact on the political culture and the culture of letters in America. He had a very distinctive speaking style. Look at the clip below. One of the things you may notice is he would jut his tongue out while speaking. Now, I don't recommend that. He did a number of things that simply don't work most of the time for most people. He could not resist using really, really big, long words. He liked to show off his vocabulary. Most people who do that come across as ridiculous. For him, it kind of worked. He was this almost caricature of the elite intellectual looking down on the masses, and he had this accent from a summer he spent in Europe, and so he didn't have the standard American accent. It was a very patrician accent. But when he spoke, he came across with humor, with wit, with insight. And unlike a lot of political debate, especially in America today, you got the sense when he was interviewing people, he actually listened to what they said. He actually responded to their arguments. And even though I wasn't in exact alignment with all of his policies, he's someone who really drew me in to the whole culture of political debate. I started watching him in the mid-1970s on his program called Firing Line. So he's no longer with us, but he does leave a legacy. Look below and see what you think of him. Samantha Bee is an American comedian who first rose to fame as a correspondent for The Daily Show, Comedy Central's Daily Show. And in the last couple of years, she's had her own weekly show where she looks at what's going on in the news and gives her own comedic take on that, plus does interviews. I personally find her extraordinarily funny. You may or may not find her funny. Look at the clip below. But I think what you can take away from her is she is herself. She's authentic. She's not trying to be like all the other late-night talk show host. Now, she makes a big deal out of the fact, and others do too, that she's really the only woman who's hosting a late-night comedy show and late-night news program, and that it is something that distinguishes her, makes her different. I do think there's something to that. Her opinions, her commentary, even though she's politically not that different from some of the other late-night hosts, her perspective is different. The style of her comedy is different. And there is an intensity, there is a ferociousness that comes through from her, but also in a way that makes her eminently likable. Now, full disclosure, she is a former client of mine. I actually had the pleasure of rehearsing with her for a day. She had been hired by, I think it was a bleach company, and she was going to be doing a series of satellite interviews all over the country talking about a particular bleach and why the 3-second rule doesn't apply. If something drops on your floor or your counter, you can't just pick it up and eat it. Anyway, she was a delight to work with, a real pro, and that's why I think she is worthy of our examination here. Again, you might not like her comedy, you might not like her politics, but look at how she's able to just infuse her personality into all the issues of the day, but in a way that doesn't make her seem like an egomaniac. Take a look, leave comments. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair is a master at public speaking. This guy can read the phone book for 5 hours. I would want to listen to him more. Now, part of it is as Americans, we have sort of a bias. There's all sorts of biases in the world. Fair, unfair, negative, positive. We Americans have a bias in favor of certain types of British accents. To our ear, it just sounds so incredibly educated, refined, and sophisticated. And Tony Blair has one of those accents. But when you see him in the House of Commons, a press conference, a set formal speech, you can tell he has put time into this. He's thought about it. He's prepared. He has rehearsed. He's looking up at people most of the time. He's not just reading and going through the motions. He's connecting at an emotional level as well as an intellectual level. So I urge you, take a look. And forgive me, those of you in the United Kingdom and some of you in Europe, the politics have changed to make him not as popular as he used to be. Again, we're not here in this course to talk about whether someone was a great political leader or bad or anything. We're just analyzing their presentation skills and public speaking skills. And I think any fair-minded observer would say that Tony Blair is one of the greatest speakers in the English language of the last 50 years. Take a look, post your comments.
Okay, we'll stop here for today. Can you stop the sharing? Okay, we just stop here for today, and I will put up the recording shortly, and then you need to revisit them. Just go to the e-learning portal, and you can have a look. Before we go, is there any other questions that you want to bring up, other than even something you want to ask, not related to the course? Maybe some IT questions, or whether you have difficulty accessing the sites. Or any other topic that you want to talk about, you can share in these sessions. The thing is that you need to